Hello and welcome back to On Course, and welcome back to the top of the world. Well, nearly. Up here, spring has sprung. The evenings are getting lighter, lockdown's been eased, and the pub gardens are now open. But the water, well, that's still pretty cold. Still, I guess you can't have it all. Anyway, in this episode, Freddie and I stand by a post, setting a new record in sub-zero conditions when rough gets nasty, and 2 bumper helpings of dock talk. But first, the end of any America's Cup is always pretty weird. Unlike many other sports, you never really know when the end's going to come. 2013 and the America's Cup in San Francisco was a perfect example of that. But when it does, years of planning and preparation, months of racing and speculation come to an abrupt halt, as if someone's just switched the power off. As seasoned America's Cup campaigner Freddie Carr explains later in this episode, an information vacuum often follows. But not in this Cup. Rumours have been circulating as to what was going to happen next for weeks, and when we got the first news there were plenty of surprises. So just before I headed home, I took a look at what the future for the next America's Cup might look like. We're still here, only just though. It's a very hard city to leave, I've learned that over the years. But leave we must, it's time to get back up to the Northern Hemisphere. But before I head back, the big story down here is about what happens to the America's Cup next. Just as Emirates Team New Zealand crossed the finishing line to retain the America's Cup, a document was signed. It was signed on board the super yacht Imagine, and it was signed between this club, the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and the Royal Yacht Squadron in Cowes. And that document was the challenge for the 37th America's Cup. That makes the Royal Yacht Squadron in Cowes the challenger of record. And as such, they're responsible for negotiating with this club about what happens in the next America's Cup. Plus, they're responsible for managing any challenger series that might happen. But once the parties had calmed down and the hangovers had subsided, there was work to be done. And a few days after that, a document that came out, a joint agreement between these 2 clubs as to how the future will look for the 37th America's Cup. And there are plenty of raised eyebrows. In that document, and it was a short document, there were a number of clues that seemed to support some of the gossip that's been floating around. Among them was the claim that the next 2 America's Cups will be run in the AC-75s. Great news, you may think. I'd think so too. They're fantastic boats with plenty more to give, I'm sure. But what gave these 2 clubs the confidence that they would be able to race in an AC-75 in the 38th America's Cup? After all, the very nature of this competition is that when you win the Cup, you make the rules. So who's to say a team that won the 37th Cup didn't want to take it back into multi-hulls or displacement monohulls? How could you be sure that you could actually stay with the AC-75? Well, as I see it, the only way that you could be sure of that between 2 clubs who did a joint statement was if those 2 clubs agreed that they would be the only ones competing for the 37th America's Cup. Then they may have a pact between them that says whoever wins guarantees that the next cycle would be in the AC-75. Now that might not be as strange as it might sound at first. The bottom line is, mounting an America's Cup campaign costs an awful lot of money, so too does hosting the event. A quick turnaround would presumably be good news for the Kiwis. Normally an America's Cup cycle is something like 3 or 4 years. That's an awful long time to try and get a sponsor to buy into a campaign. Plus, if there's only 2 of you, Challenger and Defender, it's much easier to go to a sponsor with a plan as to what's going to happen. The cost of hosting an event for just a Challenger and a Defender would be an awful lot less too. We've been here for 4 months and most of that was taken up with Challenger Series selection. If you don't have to do that, the America's Cup match could be over in a matter of weeks. The other potential benefit is that it keeps the America's Cup in the public eye. It keeps racing out there in front for a meaningful trophy as well. We've seen in the past with America's Cup World Series events that you can get people really interested, but it's still not quite the America's Cup, and sometimes not even in the boats that are going to be used for the Cup. So a quick match between INEOS Team UK and Team New Zealand in the UK, what a prospect that would be. But not everybody sees it with quite the same level of enthusiasm. Shortly after that joint statement came out, the Americans declared that they were rather disappointed. The New York Yacht Club, who are represented by American Magic down here, had spent a great deal of time putting together a hefty document on how they saw the future of the America's Cup. And there are some other details that haven't gone down well as well. One of them has been the nationality rule. For the next Cup cycle and the one beyond, 100% nationality will be required. Some see that as a means of protecting Team New Zealand's toy cupboard from being raided by others trying to form a dream team. A more cynical view might be that they're trying to prevent other teams from taking part, but there is actually a clause in the letter that says that emerging nations wouldn't have to meet that requirement. One of the other points that surprised a few people when they read the document was the mention that there would be options for the next venue for the forthcoming America's Cups. Most of the time, in fact I can only think of 2 other occasions, but most of the time the America's Cup is defended in the country that won it. Those are just a few of the points that we know so far. There's going to be plenty more detail coming out over the next few months, I'm sure, but one thing you can be certain of is that the 37th America's Cup looks set to be no less contentious than any of the ones that went before it. Some say it's easier to get Glastonbury tickets than it is an entry in the Rolex Fastnet race. But this year, the race around the Rock will be notable for something else too. The continued growth of the double-handed class. Here, one of the rising stars is the Jeanneau Sunfast 3300. I tested this boat last year. Designed specifically for short-handed sailing, she's a pocket rocket, and it seems that plenty of others agree. Since last year, 70 have been built, and this year 15 of them will be on the Fastnet start line. Short-handed sailing has been on the rise for some time. More than 2,000 double-handed ORC certificates were issued last year. A new double-handed European Championship will take place in Greece, and next year in Sweden. In the States, Annapolis, Newport, Florida, the Great Lakes and the Gulf Coast have all got double-handed events. So perhaps it's no surprise that boats designed with all this in mind have been so successful. Almost want one myself. But if cruising's more your thing, it's multi-hulls that are on the rise. And if you're looking to head off the beaten track, the Neil trimarans are proving to be very popular. But as catamarans have become increasingly widespread, why would you choose a tri? According to Neil, there are plenty of reasons. Among them, weight distribution is better as the central hull provides a more suitable location for heavy gear. An amidships engine centralises the weight and reduces the pitching moment. With a lower wetted surface area than that of a cat, light air's performance is said to be better. And a single rudder provides a better feel and is lighter than a dual setup. When it comes to the accommodation, the wider overall platform allows more space on the bridge deck and greater scope for larger, more comfortable cabins, and so the list goes on. But it's a list that makes a compelling argument for those looking to head over the horizon. I wouldn't mind betting that Cobra International are the biggest boat builders you've never heard of. Based in Thailand, they have 2,500 staff and produce around 80% of the world's windsurfers, surfboards and stand-up paddleboards. One of their latest products is the Skeeter, a foiling scow for mere mortals. Its hull shape provides good stability when you're not on the foils, and impressive speeds when you are, with claims of around 18 knots in just 8 knots of breeze and topping out at around 30 in stronger conditions. The stayed rig means that it can adapt to a wide range of crew weights. The U-shaped Vang track allows good control of the mainsail leach, which helps with the power delivery. And the fully articulating foil provides a more stable ride. Plus, there's a smaller version for younger sailors, the Nicky. Foiling isn't coming for ordinary folk, it's here. Numbers. Never have they been more important. But setting up what you want to see when you want to see it hasn't always been that easy. Now, B&G's new Nemesis display takes instrumentation onto another level, and it's about way more than just visibility. The touchscreen displays are highly configurable. Key data can be shown in a more intuitive way. The touchscreen makes it easy to set up. The context-sensitive mode lets you set up displays to suit specific moments during a race. You could have one dashboard set up for, say, the pre-start before switching to the upwind display, and then on to the downhill configuration. The displays can also be controlled through an Apple Watch. And as you'd expect, the displays are fully integrated with the B&G network. Plus, you can see them at any angle, even when you're wearing polarised sunglasses, and operate the screen with wet fingers. This year sees the world's biggest offshore event, the Rolex Fastnet race, get underway. At least it will come August. But it would seem there are some who just can't wait until then to scorch around the 600-mile racetrack.
Well, we're going to try a couple of records today. We want to try them around the Isle of Wight, so see if we can get under 2 hours. And then go straight into the Fastnet. Kind of ambitious, but the wind's right, the water's flat, the team all ready to go. It should be a lot of fun, except it could be 20 degrees warmer.
It's early in the morning, we're just prepping to leave the dock. The northerly's just blown in and this is what we're going to ride. The sooner we leave and get out on the Fastnet course, the better the tide gates are on the way around. It would be really nice to start off the Fastnet one with the Isle of Wight under our belt. If it's not under our belt, then it'll be all eyes just on getting that Fastnet back.
We've got two options. We either wait and see how it settles down, or we decide now that it's a no and we just get straight into Fastnet.
Stand by. No!
It's like driving a rally car. It's really high performance, they're really sort of rigid beasts and you just feel any acceleration in them and they just keep going. So, you know, 2 meters, 3 meter seas, you'll still be doing 30 knots.
We're 5.5 hours into it, we're just coming up to the Lizard, so that's already well and truly on record pace. We're about to come round out into the Irish Sea, expect it to start getting lumpy out there. But so far so good and 18.5 hours to go. We're about 45 miles away from the finish line here. We're sort of averaging 22 to 25 knots. We're just borderline, we'll break the record. I think we'll just be outside the 24, so all good on board. Record holder.
You know, last night when it was like minus 10 degrees, wind chill factor, vicious seas in the Irish Sea, blowing 20 knots, doing 25 knots. 5 people been sick already, and I'm about to. It was fantastic, unbelievable. They did a great job. Incredible team.
As those of you who followed our coverage of the America's Cup will know, Freddie Carr became a regular commentator for Planet Sail. So when we both got back to Blighty, we thought it was time for another catch-up. Right, Freddie.
Here we are.
Well, here we are with the other side of the world, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's not quite as sunny as it was in Auckland. They said it was, but...
It's a classic Emsworth spring day, I'd say.
Yeah, it is nice though.
It is nice. Very
High
grey.
tide.
Very
We're
grey.
in your hometown as well.
Yep, Sir Peter Blake country in Emsworth.
Yeah, nice. And it is really pretty. I can't wait to get out on the water actually, just looking. We've got a Musto skiff sailing in there and a few dinghies and some other keelboats sailing around it.
A good scene, a good scene.
It is. So the last time we caught up, we were down under and it was just before the Cup was won. We know what happened at the end of that. But what do you think? I mean, I could probably spend all day talking about it, but what do you think are the key things that we take away from that event?
Well, I think just in terms of eyeballs on racing, you and I know from working in the TV at the end of the America's Cup, the amount of people that were engaged with the racing was phenomenal. Some of the stats coming out of Italy were mind-blowing in Europe as a whole. So the Cup clearly worked. Yes, it didn't tick traditional sailors' boxes, we know that, and that conversation will be ongoing for a long time, probably until the class changes again, and then the conversation will reignite. But I think sports people and sports fans are into watching America's Cup sailing for the first time, arguably ever.
I mean, how much do you think, I mean, even just in basic terms, I suppose one of the things that people may well wonder is, okay, so it was great watching it, great watching them charging around at 40 plus knots, but how's that ever going to affect my sailing? I mean, do you think we're going to see those kind of boats in smaller versions, 25 footers on foils?
Yeah, I think we might actually. I do think we will. You see the youth class that's started up in Italy, the 69F, started on Lake Garda, and those guys are doing a really good job. I believe they're knocked out by Persico, simple boats, 3-person boats, mixed crews, and they've got a European tour up and running. You see the foiling going into the offshore world with a mixed bag of results, as we saw from the Vendée. But I do think there is probably more out of an AC75 that you can see translating into the wider marine industry than the AC50 or the big cat in San Fran. Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Just the hardware is really relevant. The hardware is really relevant. Now, I'm not talking about cruising boats, I'm talking about Grand Prix racing more than anything. And there's been some big jumps in this cycle where the hardware out of your traditional hardware providers has come on a long way, and it will for sure over the next 2 or 3 years end up on Mini-Maxis and TP52s.
When you say hardware, you talk about winches?
Winches, furlers, sort of some of the rigging stuff, some of the ropes, a lot around the hydraulics. We live in a hydraulic world now in the Cup world, and I expect to see, well, depending on class rules, it's a really nice way to sail a boat. So we'll see how efficient hydraulic systems can get on various boats as well. So yeah, I think there will be more trickle down out of this boat than we've seen previously.
What about the software and some of the sort of systems that we couldn't see on board the boats? I mean, obviously we never saw any of that from the outside. You will have seen it close up. I mean, that must be pretty impressive as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's phenomenal. The systems engineers, the software guys that are tweaking every single control in the sail plan and in the foil plan is unbelievable. Now, does that trickle down? Unlikely, because people don't need that level, that finite level of control and performance across the wider sailing world. And I think that's actually where the America's Cup holds its magic, in that last little bit of finer detail, trying to find the last tiny quarter of a knot of speed out of a foil by doing some fancy thing with a control.
Oh, you burst my bubble.
Why? What were you going to say?
Well, because I've been thinking all along that maybe some of the software controls and the sort of algorithms that came out. Sure, I agree that you know it's for the finer levels of it, but I just wondered whether some of that development would find its way into autopilot systems that steer boats more efficiently and you know reduce rolling and that kind of thing, that take in a lot more inputs and the rest of it.
Yeah, I'd say that sort of ride height sensors and autopilot systems, you could have that could be integrated into a safe foiling boat, like Volvo invented the seatbelt in the car and then threw it out to the whole automotive community. There must be stuff going on now that you can make a foiling boat, let's call it even a cruising boat, safe because of ride height sensors and the systems and the engineering that goes around that. But that's probably a little while.
That's what made me wonder a bit about it as well, actually, was when I talked about, you know, would a 25-footer on fours be possible? I was thinking, I mean, you and I both ride motorbikes, and we know that nowadays the technology and the systems on board a modern motorbike, even just a modest one, are really quite remarkable. It's not just ABS anymore, it's roll sensitive gubbins and all, you know, roll sensitive traction control and all that kind of stuff, and sports mode, and that's found its way in there, and that's sort of come from racing bikes and racing technology, hasn't it? So I just wondered whether those kind of packages, if they become cheaper and you know, reliable and cheaper, that maybe those are the kind of things that are going to make the transition into these small sporty boats, because most of us aren't able to sail at the level that you guys sail at. But if you have a little bit of electronic assistance, maybe it's possible.
I guess there's three ways to look at it. There's classes like the TP52 and the Super Series that are brilliant because they are what they are, and that for me is the very top end of displacement monohull sailing, so they don't really need to look at that world. And then there is foiling racing, where an element of the foiling racing is the pilot's skill, and to some respect that's what the Sail GP is, to some respect that's what the Cup is, although they do get the software help. I guess in answer to your question then, there could be a role for that pilot development system, and as you say, sort of traction control and ABS style of sailing in more cruisery, point and go to the next island in the Caribbean kind of world. You could potentially see that,
I hope so. Okay, so whilst we're looking ahead to the future, AC37, I mean, we're only a few weeks away from the Cup being won, and of course, as is always the case, people are already talking about the next one. Lots has gone under the bridge, not least of all where it might be, whether it might be up in the UK, whether it's going to be back down New Zealand. All of that seems to be a very movable feast at the moment. What about the actual event itself? Do you think that there's any more certainty about what we might see in the next iteration of it, irrespective of where it happens?
I think it's been really good that there's a path already. The amount of America's Cup cycles that I've come out the back of, and there's nothing. There's radio silence about what the Cup is going to be, on class, on nationality, on venue, on date, on all of everything across the board. You sit there as a part of the America's Cup family and you just shrug your shoulders and go, what next? But within a week of the Cup finishing, we knew that it's going to be in the AC75, which is brilliant. We knew that there's going to be a continuation of the nationality rule, and they've put a loose time frame on it, which keeps all the current challengers obviously fully engaged. And there's some pretty big decisions for the defender to make, I'd have thought.
What about the actual format? Do you think, I mean, obviously it's very early days, but what's the chatter from what you've heard about what people would like to see? I mean, I know that there was quite a lot of talk, for example, before we left, about people saying, oh, we'd like the pre-start to be longer, maybe the box should be bigger.
No, it's brilliant. Like, obviously we're still operating within COVID restrictions here in the UK, but I have managed to catch up with a few friends and do a socially distanced walk, and everybody's got an opinion on the Cup, which is why I love the Cup. And obviously you kind of get a lot of well dones for the INEOS performance, and then you get a lot of, well, what was wrong, you know, and I love that. Everyone's giving you a good bit of feedback about it all. On the Cup itself, there's a couple of things you keep hearing. People want to see more pre-start action, you know, and I think the Cup's moved away from, I think in the initial IACC class, it was a 5-minute pre-start. I think it then went down to 4. We then obviously had the reaching pre-starts introduced with a 2 minutes box time in San Fran and the same in Bermuda. Then we've kept that 2-minute pre-start and started upwind again, and I really like the upwind start, I must say. I think that
Why
adds,
do you like that?
I don't know. I guess it's because I grew up match racing, and I've always loved that kind of final fishtail back to the line and winding it up onto the line is something that I absolutely love about match racing. But a lot of people have said they want to see a longer pre-start. They want to see a 3-minute pre-start so that you can't just time your run around the box and go back to the line. You have to get back onto port at some point. So it forces double the amount of manoeuvres and double the amount of engagements. The other thing a good few people are saying is they want to see the start line moved up the first leg. So regardless of where people come off the line, or if someone's won or lost the start, you're kind of almost one and into the windward gate. So straight away you have another interaction at the windward gate. And yeah, there's so many ideas that people are talking about. Like, people want to see compulsory uses of code zeros on the downwind and that kind of stuff, which I'm all for because I love boat handling, but with the apparent wind speeds that you have over the deck, it would be pretty tricky.
There seems to be a lot of positive things that came out of this cup, isn't there? I say that because going into it, there was a risk. I think everybody. I mean, not many people voiced it particularly, but there was a risk that with a brand new class, untried, untested, with none of the America's Cup World Series events before to actually have a test at, that we might be facing another San Francisco where one-horse races. But that didn't happen, and we ended up with boats that were on the same leg of the race course most of the time, which was nothing short of extraordinary given the leap forward in technology.
I think it was a real shame that American Magic capsized. I think it was a real shame for the event that they capsized, because they were skipping along in over 14 knots. They were going to beat Prada in that race. That would have, and ifs, buts and maybes. But then you're into that second half of that round robin series, double the amount of racing that we eventually saw. All the teams would have got better, you know. I think that was a real shame for the event that they capsized. I felt for those guys.
Right, what are you up to? You're off. What are you up to immediately?
Immediately, I am in Sail GP world, actually, not as a sailor, which is kind of fine. I think my days of sprinting across a trampoline are behind me, but I've joined the commentary team for Sail GP, which I'm very excited about. So I'm actually watching a lot of Sail GP racing at the moment and getting my head around the technicalities of that boat, which has changed slightly since I sailed those boats in Bermuda. And
are you going out to Bermuda?
I'm not. I'm doing it all from London.
I'm
doing it all from London, and I'm really looking forward to that, I must say. Just the one design element of it, I've always loved. Like sailor versus sailor, and you look at the characters in there now. You've obviously got Ben Ainsley, you've got Pete Burling, you've got Jimmy Spittle, you've got Nathan Outridge. I mean, you've got Tom Slingsby. To name sort of 5 out of the 8, and that is going to be, talk about the world's best sailors in a one design fleet.
How do you think Sail GP sits alongside the America's Cup now with AC75s? Because a few months ago we had no idea whether AC75s would work and where they would sit, whether it would happen.
Yeah.
Do you think that Sail GP has been not outclassed by it, but displaced by the Cup, perhaps? Or do you think they can work together? Or how do you see it?
I think there's room for both of them in the sailing world, particularly a post-COVID sailing world where people are hungry for Grand Prix sailing. And I'm not just talking about the athletes that are lucky enough to do it, but I'm talking about the sporting public, the sailing sporting public, which is on the grow. People want to keep seeing it. I had a really nice message of a lady whose son's really got into an America's Cup sailing and is just like, so how does this work now? When will you be sailing in England? We want to come and see you guys race. And you have to explain the weirdness of the America's Cup. But I'm like, but if your kid's into it, get him to check this out. Check out Sail GP if he thinks this is cool. And I think that's where they work. I think that's where they work really well together.
Yeah. Do you think is there a synergy between the two boats as well now? I mean, we've got, as you say, we've got Ben and Jimmy who've come hot foot from the Cup straight into Sail GP. Obviously, both of them know Sail GP GP pretty well anyway. They've been there before.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll get back on the boat and go, this feels a bit easy or more difficult, or?
Oh, that's a good question.
How will it compare?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know from speaking to the guys that have been lucky enough to sail an AC75 and sail a 50, they just say they're two phenomenally amazing boats to sail. What you can translate from one to the other, probably because of your wing sail catamaran versus a soft sailed monohull, maybe not that much, to be honest. A few technical points, but you're still just racing, aren't you? It's all about the comms, it's all about the boundaries, it's all about the rules, it's all about time on distance, and it's all about the boat speed loop versus the tactical loop, shift versus pressure. So there'll be all of that for sure. And I think they can sit alongside each other really well. I know if you were looking to challenge in the next America's Cup or defend in the next America's Cup, you'd be pretty pleased that a good chunk of your sailing team were out doing the Sail GP. There's not a more relevant circuit to be doing in the world right now.
For me, having Ben and Jimmy and the big names coming back into it, and that's not to sort of downplay what some of the other teams have been doing up until then, but to have the big names transferring straight from the Cup into that, I think gives it quite a boost.
And Pete and Blair, eh?
Exactly.
And Pete and Blair.
That's
I mean,
that's
going to be brilliant. Those guys haven't kind of raced in one design foiling racing as a crew since the World Series stuff in 16.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a scalp for people to knock off.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one to watch. Okay, so now after that, you are back out on the water.
I am. I'm sailing with Gladiator again this year, the British TP team. Really good group of guys, all British guys this year, all British crew. And we're hoping to do the TP Super Series. We're hoping to do a bunch of sailing out of Tony Langley, the owner of Gladiator, is a member of the New York Yacht Club. And we go over there for a good chunk of the summer and do their annual regattas, which is brilliant. So that's a great, and we're big supporters of Cows Week and all the regattas on the South Coast, which is really important, you know. Obviously we're a community that travels a lot to go to regattas and all of that, but it is still just only a sailing race and a Grand Prix circuit. So we have to be very mindful and very respectful of the fact that international travel has got serious restrictions on it right now. So we can't think that it's the be all and end all. It's really not.
No, well, let's hope it isn't.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it's high tide, Freddie.
Yeah. I should be out on my paddleboard.
There's all kinds of things that we should be out on, and I'm gonna deal with that right now. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, fair enough. Rather you than me, actually. It's a bit brisk.
Oh,
it
come
is a bit
on.
brisk.
You've changed.
Yeah, I have.
Right. Well, anyway, who's going to say it?
Oh, cheers a lot.
Cheers a lot,
Matt. Yeah, nice one.
The 2021 Sail GP season kicks off in Bermuda. Hot foot from the America's Cup, Peter Burling, Blair Tuke, Jimmy Spithill and Sir Ben Ainsley join an already impressive lineup. This year sees some changes with a modular system for the solid wing sails that allows them to vary their size to broaden the wind range that they can race in. The AC50 jibs still remain and are essential in managing the airflow over the wing. Doyle sails are the official sailmaker to Sail GP, and their structured luff technology plays a key part in the sail plan. Catamarans tend to rack under load, which can transfer big loads onto the headsails. Conventional jibs would blow apart. Doyle's structured luff technology is designed to carry these high loads and allows the sails to operate over a wide range of wind speeds. This also keeps costs down with smaller sail inventories and ensures that the sails last, which is crucial when the final race of the season decides the title. So there's a great deal riding on the jib. The brief was simple: to create a super yacht that could cruise the world in comfort, but one that could win races too. Launched last October, Southern Wind's latest 100-foot carbon sandwich super yacht is Morgana. Her 6,800-mile maiden voyage from Cape Town to La Spezia in Italy took just 30 days. Under double reef mainsail and a staysail, she hit over 26 knots. Morgana is clearly no slouch. Combining performance with practicality is complex, but there are several key points in this Rykel design that provide clues as to how this has been made possible. A powerful 6.1 metre fin and bulb lifting keel that can be raised to just 4 metres is one. Her ample beam produces high form stability and power while creating a large internal volume for spacious accommodation. And advanced sail handling systems from the carbon mast, composite rigging and transverse jib tracks. She may be new on the scene, but this is a sophisticated cruiser racer that has already laid down a marker in the superyacht world. Palmer, superyachts. The two go hand in hand. This is the heart of the superyacht world. And this year, the Superyacht Cup will be celebrating 25 years, making it the longest running superyacht regatta in Europe. Hosted by the Real Club Nautico Palma, this year sees a new performance class join the long-standing original superyacht class and the non-Spinnaker Corinthian class. The event will take place from the 23rd to the 26th of June. Aside from the boats themselves, Palma is also a hub for superyacht crew, making it a perfect place to run a major regatta in such tricky times. By keeping the focus on the racing, the organisers are confident that pandemic restrictions can be met. And with such a collective yearning to get racing again, there's good evidence that this year's competition will be a fitting tribute to the 25th anniversary in what has become the home of Mediterranean superyacht sailing. There's a friend of mine whose favourite catchphrase is, "Ah, well, it was windier back then." But when I stumbled across some archive footage from the BT Global Challenge, I started to think he just might have a point. Back in the 90s, people paid large sums of money to go around the world the wrong way. Pounding upwind against the prevailing winds and currents for much of the trip, it's easy to see why a westabout circumnavigation is referred to in this way. And this was the course for the 29,000-mile Global Challenge. It was a mammoth slog to windward. The race was founded by Sir Shay Blythe, who in 1971 had been the first person to sail non-stop westabout around the world. The first Global Challenge race was run in 1992 in purpose-built one designs, and the race had 7 legs. And while not all of it was as punishing as this, it's easy to see why it was billed as the world's toughest yacht race and the ultimate challenge for amateur sailors. You certainly wouldn't want it any harder. So once again, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for leaving all those messages. Please do keep telling us what you think. We love reading the messages. Please also make sure that you subscribe and like and all the other things, including the notification bell. It all makes a big difference as to what we can do with the show going forwards. Now, if you happen to find yourself down in New Zealand, you lucky thing, and you're looking for a set of wheels to tour around the place, well, there's always the Southern Hemisphere Planet Sail company vehicle, which you'll now be pleased to hear is up for sale. In the meantime, I hope you managed to get afloat. Stay safe, stay well, until next time.